The next thing I would like to show you is how to perform a graceful switchover. Now, a graceful switchover can only be performed if the primary and standby database is up to date, meaning the archive log gap is 0. So if we go back to our database and we go and run an archive log gap, we should see an archive log gap of 0. There could be a time difference, but the importance is that the transfer and archive log gap is 0. We are now in a good shape to run a graceful switchover. So we go back to the main menu, we select the perform graceful switchover option. Again, we'll be presented with a list of our DDC files. In this case, we just have the one. I select that. And what it's doing now is it's running a log gap report behind the scenes. And it shows you the details, and if everything is fine to continue, you will have the submit button. If there is a gap between the primary and standby, you will not have the submit button, and you will be requested to first ship and apply logs to make sure that they are consistent. So in this case, I know it's all good, that the gap is 0. I can now kick off a graceful switchover. And I click on submit, and that starts the graceful switchover process. And again, you can see the active task being listed. And if I hover over this, again, you can see the updates, or if you click on it, it will show you the updates as it's going through the process. And I'll briefly talk through what is happening during a graceful switchover. So when we do a graceful switchover, first we do some pre-checks. So we make sure that the difference between the primary and standby, the archive log gap is 0. If it is 0, we can perform a graceful switch. And then what we start doing is we start the process. And that includes transferring redo information from the primary to the standby, and then changing the roles so that we end up with the original standby database becoming the primary, and the original primary database now becomes a standby database. So in effect, what we're doing is doing a role reversal in a controlled manner. And if I click on it again, just to show you there, it is busy going through this process. The process in version 8 is a lot faster than in previous versions. We've made a lot of changes to speed this process up. If you were running this through the command line, you would notice that you only execute the command from one of the systems. It can be either the primary or the standby. You don't have to run it on both of them as in previous versions. So as you can see there now, it's getting towards the end of the graceful switchover. It's converted the standby to a primary and the primary to a standby. And it's just resynchronizing, meaning what we do behind the scenes there is we actually shipping and applying a log to make sure that the primary and standby database is in sync and ready for you to use again. And we show a summary page, and again with the support package option available to you. And if we now go back to the manage configuration screen, we will notice that for that DDC file, the source host is now Dbv2 and the destination host is Dbv1. This is indication that we have performed a graceful switchover, because previously it was Dbv1 as the source host and the destination as Dbv2. Right, and just to show you, if I now go back and I would like to ship a log, the process has started, but this process is now running from Dbv2. And the process is starting, it first does run inspect because that option is enabled, which means it goes to the standby, it gets information, it knows what's the archive log difference, and it will start shipping logs. Again, there was no log switch since the previous run, so we do force a log switch, and then you can see there we transferred files from Dbv2 to Dbv1, and the sequence was 16. So I've now transferred a log from the primary to the standby, and I'm just going to apply a log just so you can see. Again, it creates a task. If I click on that, we can see that sequence 15 and 16 is being applied. Because 15 was already on the system, it was available to be applied.